Welcome to FitBody Lifestyle, the show where we dive deep into the world of fitness, health, business, relationships, and the art of living a balanced life. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Greg, and we're here to give you the benefit of our experiences in the fitness and bodybuilding industry, the corporate world, running a business, personal development, and building healthy relationships.
Whether you're sweating it out in the gym, hustling in your business, or seeking balance in your everyday life, you're in the right place.
So lace up those sneakers and grab that water bottle, and let's get ready to transform our minds, our bodies, and our lives. Hello, Fit Body Lifers. Welcome to another episode of Fit Body Lifestyle, and I am here with my love of my life, Jamie D. And we are also graced and honored to have the presence of Chef Travis Peterson here. Chef Peterson or Chef Travis, I don't know. Chef Travis, what do we want to go?
Both works.
Okay.
Chef Travis.
Chef Travis was with us for another full episode where we talked a little bit more, or we talked in depth, I think, about cannabis and its some of the dinners that he hosts and the events that he hosts. Today, we're going to get a little bit into a different topic, which is athletes and cannabis and therapeutic uses for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the landscape is changing, and the perception of edibles mean cookies, brownies, and gummies is sort of taboo, right? And this is the exciting thing right now, being where we're at. It's a new frontier.
This
has been the forbidden fruit of the kitchen. And it's exciting to be at the forefront of this right now. There is no path. We are right now going down an unbeaten path and creating a way for the next generation of chefs and home cooks to look at the plant differently than really what we've been taught.
I think every athlete
Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Can we get your check-in word?
Well, yeah, that's okay.
I
was actually going to get there. I was actually going to get there.
All right,
okay, cool.
Forgetful. Because when you smoke a lot that is my one Achilles heel on the road of touring, is that I leave stuff behind everywhere I go. Now, the good thing is we stay at the same place usually a lot of times, so we come back and something is still there. But I do a lot of the times when I come home, my wife be like, "You forgot that?" And you don't know how hard it is.
I actually think there's something nostalgic about leaving something behind, leaving a little bit piece of yourself behind.
Piece of yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I'd always say that going to a private dinner, if I forget one thing back at the house, that was the sign that we were going to have a good dinner. Because that always
There you go.
Like,
I love it.
I forgot
There
this.
you go.
All right, so now I'll let you continue.
Well, now I forgot the point I was going to make. So.
Of course you did. So for the people that didn't see our first episode together, will you give just a quick background on yourself? And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a cannabis chef. I started cooking with cannabis in 2018. Have served over 25,000 people their first infused dining experience. Have traveled over 8 countries now. Last year, 184 dinners alone, going city to city around the U.S. I've really set a goal for myself now to open the door for the next generation of chefs and home cooks to really bring this cuisine style from the underground into the mainstream, something that someone could go into a restaurant, sit down and order, or something an athlete could connect directly with, a meal prep private chef to create a meal plan where you can actually incorporate the therapeutic benefits of cannabis, into your weekly diet plan.
Right. And we're going to talk a lot about, a specific sports specific and athletes. And I know that you've worked with a lot of athletes, and this has been a focal point for you as well. Yeah. So I feel like it really applies. And I'm all for the meal prep thing, by the way.
Yes. Yes. Especially seeing National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball, NCAA, all in the last couple of years make that change to allow their athletes now to use cannabis, it has really helped break that taboo of cookies, brownies, and gummies, because we can now create specific, recipes that, whether it's after practice or switching time zones and trying to change up your sleep schedule, that it can have more of a purpose than just the recreational side of what the plant offers.
Well, I would say, I think there are probably 5, there may be more, 5 areas that are of key concern to most athletes in our world, which is recovery, sleep, which is related, but recovery and sleep are a little bit different. So inflammation, also kind of related, mental acuity, and performance. So on the energy side. Okay, go ahead.
Digestion.
Well, I guess I was including that. I was going to, okay, so 6, gut, because I was going to talk about gut or digestion. Yeah.
Yeah. No, again, when we used to look at the edible always meant really the brownie. And that's why we've heard the brownie story, or I have 1,000 times. Back in college, me and my roommates had a bag of pot. We threw it in the butter. We made some brownies. I didn't really feel much, but Ted ate way too much and zoned out. He's never touched it again. That story is traditional in the sense because you were always blind cooking to the facts. There was no education out there to give you the knowledge to understand more about the plant. The focus was always THC and the psychoactive effects.
Well, there's another aspect of that too, which is in the home prep part of this, if you're not knowledgeable in this space or experienced or both, it's very easy to in a flat of brownies that all of the THC can end up in 3 brownies out of your 12, and that's one of the other reasons why I think some people have these bad experiences, because they're not properly incorporating it as a dose. And as you've always said, is poison makes what.
The dosage makes the poison.
I always mix that up, but I like to have you. The dosage makes the poison. Right. So if you're getting a brownie, it could be that your cannabinoid profile, or what do you call it, endocannabinoid
system,
doesn't respond as differently than somebody else. But it could also be in the food prep itself.
Absolutely, the food prep. I mean, even if we look at the traditional way of creating extraction, the decarb method. One, we've had advancement in technology with equipment. So the old way of using a crock pot or a double broiler, or even putting the cannabis flower in your oven, is really outdated. And that's where some of your first mistakes and problems can be created. We now have a tool called the sous vide, which is a water circulator. It's meant for more food prep with your proteins and your vegetables and whatnot, but it's the essential tool for a cannabis chef. You need complete control of the time, temperature, and environment you're making your extraction in, because you need to be 100% confident in what you have as an end product. Some of the pitfalls that we have here in the US right now compared to Canada, where Canada is an open, federally legal market, we've only got, I think, 24, 25 states right now where recreational cannabis is legal. You can't bring cannabis from one state to another. If you wanted to create an extraction, maybe an olive oil, a coconut oil, in Canada, I could go to a lab for $30 and have that oil tested, give them back a COA telling me exactly how much cannabis is in there, what are the terpene profiles. It'll give me all that information.
Wow.
Some of the pitfalls here in the States is some states will allow that. Some states require a cannabis license for you to be able to go in. So now the home cook who is trying to incorporate into their meal prep for the week, they don't have access to that because they don't have a cannabis license. So I think we will eventually see that at-home test kit. Again, this is the great thing with capitalism is it promotes new avenues. It brings prices down as things become more easily available and accessible. So again, you are starting to give the cook, the chef, more power through education, through equipment, to start to understand it.
Well, and to that point, Travis, is that and I've used this statement before, is there's in political science there's something called the Overton window. Yep. And the Overton window basically is the window of any culture between the far left and the far right. Where is it at any one point in time? And it shifts. And as you've seen, 24 states with approved recreational use, well, 10 years ago, that was 0, right? Yeah. And so, and I think it was 10 years ago. I don't know when the first state came in, but roughly 10 years ago, that was it was illegal everywhere.
2012 with Colorado.
Okay, so 2012 with Colorado, so 12 years ago or 13 years ago, and it's
go Colorado.
Go Colorado. As the part of what I know is important to you is that, and you talked about this in the first episode, is the movement. Right. And that is how we shift the Overton window to more accessibility, more demystification, debunking certain, the brownie story, right? The
gateway drug
there
theory.
You go. Yes. Right? And that's what it was as I was growing up. Right. So I do think that these types of conversations that we're having today are so essential to both educating, demystifying, debunking, but also getting to that more cultural acceptance of, in Canada, is culturally accepted. In America, it's
West Coast culturally accepted, and you go to the middle, it's like no, and What I've seen also, though, traveling around the country, is that the markets where I think are too small or maybe more traditionally conservative are the ones that jump all over this.
Interesting.
2023, I was in Little Rock, Arkansas 3 or 4 times. And I never thought I would go to Little Rock, Arkansas.
I wouldn't think so either. That's amazing.
Sitting down doing dinners with people where 80% of the room's never done cannabis before, right? And that's why we take these dinners to kind of bring them into a familiar setting. It's a dinner party. Let's provide a ton of education and safety to make it a little more easy. And, once they've had that one positive experience, it starts to break down those stereotypes and taboos that have been built up about what this is, and to start to what it can be. And that's what we're seeing right now as more states become legal, as more associations like the NBA, Major League Baseball allow for cannabis use. Now we can start looking at this as, how else can I incorporate this, right? We're seeing these therapeutic benefits that terpenes offer, right? So can we start to create recipes that are focused on the athlete's recovery, right? To focus on.
You're making me laugh a little bit because I was just thinking about the alcohol industry, and we've talked about this a little bit. But in the alcohol industry, the winemakers of America made this big surge maybe 10, 15 years ago of getting, hey, a glass of wine a day is good for heart health and everything. Yeah. And well, maybe not so much. But it was that it was. It just makes me think about this, is that accessibility without knowledge can promote bad behaviors. Right. Accessibility with knowledge can create therapeutic uses and opportunities. And that's really what we're focused on, is how do we delve into, I'm not saying alcohol doesn't have any therapeutic use. Right. It's a great sterilizer if you have a wound. And there may be, there's a social aspect to it for sure, and used in moderation is everything. But cannabis is a different animal altogether, and its usage especially in therapeutic side of things, I mean, it's been around in cancer research or cancer treatment for a long time, and I think that's one of the big reasons why it jumped over that initial impulse of not allowing it, because the data is the data. It's got a therapeutic use. It's got a therapeutic place in pain management and pain therapy, much better than, OxyContin was a major issue for America. I don't think you're seeing that same thing in America.
And where we really started to see the tide change was really the introduction of CBD, right? Not the introduction of we didn't know it was there, but as people started to get informed about it, and all of a sudden now you could buy CBD at your local pharmacy. That started to ease some of the more traditionally conservative demographics of, no, this is a Schedule 1 drug, to, oh, wait a minute, when I rub some CBD oil on my carpal tunnel, right, my hand starts to feel a little better. I'm not high, right, but it's helping. I think one of the big shifters we also see is the sleep aid. For myself, if there's one use that cannabis helps with, it's sleep. I get great sleeps from using the right amount of cannabis before bed, using the right strains before bed, especially for someone like myself who spends 20 days a month touring, going city to city, going from the East Coast to the Central, to come home for 2 days and then go back out. I really lean on cannabis to help me get that sleep, because to me, sleep is some of the most important part of my day. Is I'm doing so much from start to go. I'm the most productive in the morning, 5 a.m. till 9 a.m. That's my golden hour of I'm going to get everything done on the computer. I wake up fresh, ready to go, charged. It doesn't take me 30 minutes to, I'm a morning person, but I can only be a morning person is if I get my 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
I can so relate to that. And I think this is very aligned with what we're talking today, because as an athlete, if you're not getting enough sleep, it's funny because, there's been times where I'm like, oh, maybe I won't, have my, cause I do the same thing. We travel a lot. I'm using the cannabis. So I've experimented a little bit with my Aura Ring to see how different is my sleep, both in terms of duration, quality, all of those things with and without. And, and then, the resulting energy for the next day. How well am I able to train, to think, to be effective in my day? And absolutely, having that little bit of cannabis in the evening can really shift that in a positive direction. So I think from an athlete standpoint, to me, that's number one.
Yeah.
Because without sleep, everything else is going to be less effective.
Absolutely. And, we understanding a little bit more about the plant will help you. We just kind of talked about how you should go about shopping for your cannabis. How do we find the right products? I mean, because you can easily go into your dispensary and say, I'm having a hard time sleeping. They give you a little tincture of THC. You drop it in. It's getting you so in your head. Then all of a sudden you're not getting the sleep that you thought it was supposed to be giving you. And that's just because you're using the wrong form, right? We have lots of different forms of cannabis extractions. And so understanding a little bit more of I need to know what the terpenes are in there and that right combination with the cannabinoid. We can avoid the psychoactive effects, the feelings of being high, by incorporating the right cannabinoid. The appropriate amount of CBD can also help get with that, sleep schedule you want. But also, there's another cannabinoid out there, CBN.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about that one because I love my CBN.
So CBN mixed with a terpene like linalool or myrcene is really going to help you get to that zone where it's, you're kind of zoning out. Your eyes are getting real heavy. It's, as soon as you put your head down on that pillow, you're going to get to that sleep form. So, I would then make sure when I go into my dispensary, I'm looking for, if I'm going to be cooking from scratch, looking for flour with those specific terpene profiles in. But I can also find there are gummies and edibles out there that, if I ask the right questions, are these cannabis-derived terpenes? What is the cannabinoid percentage in those edibles and that? But when we're cooking from scratch, now we can rely on superfoods, right? Are we creating recipes, again, with this purpose where we want to pair the terpene from the cannabis that we're using in the extraction we're making with those natural terpenes that are already in those plants, fruits, and herbs? Again, falling back to the ginger, turmeric, hummus, ginger and turmeric, high with anti-inflammatory properties, looking at terpenes like pinene and caryophyllene with CBN and CBD. Now we've created something, again, that bedtime snack dish 2 hours before. Let's focus on the joint pains that I'm having, and let's focus on making sure I get that sleep. So when I wake up in the morning, I can feel fresh and ready to go. We're also seeing products come out now. There's something called Undo. Right? It comes in a little capsule form, but if you've consumed too much cannabis the night before, sometimes you get a weed hangover. You've mentioned before where you felt like you were high for days. So you wake up the next day, you're feeling that fogginess. Well, you can take some of these natural supplements that will help sort of ease that. So, again, these products weren't available 10 years ago. And now all of a sudden, the capitalist model encourages new inventions, new thoughts, innovation, right? So it's really cool to see these products come out that, those same pills or supplements we can offer to guests even at the dinner if they're starting to feel the adverse effects, right? So we can start to control a little bit about, how high you're starting to feel if you think you've overconsumed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sleep is, we've covered that. And I think that was really, really helpful. So kind of that combination, looking at the terpenes, but then also,
and do you want to summarize that too real quick? Just so it's the linalool, right?
Linalool. So again, finding terpenes that have high sedative properties.
Okay.
So linalool and myrcene, those are the two common ones. They'll be labeled on your cannabis strains.
Myrcene is the one that also comes with
the munchies.
Yeah. So that one, depending on what you're wanting to get out of it, you may want to just be a little more careful.
You may and err on the side of caution. But again, that we all react differently to terpenes, which we've kind of touched on, right? And you brought up the question earlier of, using cannabis as like a pre-workout. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that really hones again on what terpenes are giving you that boost to go in, right? Someone's found a strain that they love, a little joint before going to the gym, and they're focused. Me personally, I don't get that. I have not found that terpene that makes me want to do that. The terpene that I'm using for cannabis when I go into the gym is telling me, hey, listen, we don't need to be in here right now. there is a shop with some ice cream down there. We could go down. We'll walk to the ice cream shop, get our steps in. That'll be the
exercise.
Right. And so, I've never found cannabis use or even, some people like to use cannabis to get in the mood, to be with their significant other. Not me. I'm good by myself on cannabis. So that is, again, kind of going through that experience of journaling on the strains you're working. And if you found a strain that is giving you that pre-workout boost to go and get into the gym, then harness that. Right? Focus and okay, that's some very useful information, right? There are strains out there that will give me that, like, I will smoke if I want to create a new dish, right? I need some creativity in that, right? Let's get this wild, let's start thinking outside the box. Well, there's a certain blend of terpenes that I'm going to want to go and focus. So that would be like a similar comparison for myself of, using cannabis to become a little more creative, which we can see comedians and musicians and that used again to, let's step out of what the box that we've been put in and then start to think elsewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do have athletes that do feel that they get a lot out of, like you said, smoking a little or then going into the gym. And then they feel like it allows them to really connect that mind muscle and really isolate that feeling. Yeah. And I've gone and done it. They've been like, okay, what strain are you doing? So I want to see if it hasn't had that same effect on me. I'm more like you. For me, it distracts my mind a little bit. So
I love a bong toke after the gym. The one thing that I've found is, over the last couple of months, I've reintroduced health as a focus to myself. So making sure that I get up and go to the gym first thing in the morning, knowing that's when I have my most amount of energy. I never hit the bong within the first 40 minutes of the morning. I have at least a cup of coffee. I allow myself to get there, and then I want to go and have some. When I'm done working out, I have a huge boost of adrenaline. Like my body feels alive and healthy, and I having that nice bong toke just rounds it all out. So for me, it's more of a post-workout. And again, that comes through the journaling aspect of discovering what works best with yourself, right?
I would say that the people who might be able to benefit from the pre-workout part and the mind-muscle connection are the people who are distracted. They need that, whether you call it mental acuity or just the almost
focus,
focus or even in some cases, I almost think relaxation, because if you're so wound up with whatever's going on in the day or your life, when you're doing a set, it's very easy to let your mind wander. And then when your mind wanders, then you're not connecting with the body part that you're supposed to be working. And if you're in that camp, then I can see application for it. But I do think that, this is part of the larger thing. This we always use the famous two words, it depends. And not everybody is going to be the same on this. And if you don't have that issue, then maybe this is not a pre-workout application. If you do struggle with that, with distraction in the gym, or it might be the gym, but if it's not the gym, it could be something that you need to calm yourself down in order to allow yourself to connect with your body in that way. You do it post-workout because that's how you're connecting with your body in that way.
Yeah, because I come out of the gym and I'm so up here. Right. It's great, but I got to dial it down a little bit. Level it down, so it'll bring me back down. Again, I naturally can get myself energized and charged, ready to go. I think that's why I'm a morning person. Right. Again, I'm ready to go in the morning, and then I have so much going on in my mind. That's when I want to start to use the cannabis to sort of hone my focus in. But if I start off right away, it's really hard for me to get focused on
what would be the terpenes that would be recommended that would be in line with focus? For the person
who's you're gonna want to look at that limonene and pinene. Those two terpenes right there are what's gonna give you that really creative boost. For me, those two terpenes, again, when I want my creativity right? Those are something I'm going to focus on. And maybe that's why that doesn't work for me in the gym, because that strain of cannabis will have my mind over there.
Yeah,
not
that
focused
totally
on the
makes
task.
sense. I was just thinking the same.
Not focused on the task at hand of, hey, I've got 15 reps to do here, and then count 30 seconds and then do another 15.
You're like, that plate looks a lot like it could host a pizza. And what would I put on that pizza?
Yeah, right. So, and again, and I've been able to come to this point through just my experience of cannabis. So that's kind of the first important step, is to learn what works best with your body and because again, incorporating cannabis into your weekly diet doesn't mean breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? You're not going to have an infused breakfast, meal, lunch, dinner. You're going to want to incorporate to certain parts of the day. Right. Whether it's
like figuring out like where it works best for you.
Best is it, these nights of having a bedtime.
I don't know why I get these weird thoughts when we're having these conversations, but I was just thinking that so we're going to come back to journaling. Journaling is going to be a consistent theme during this conversation. Yeah. And I don't know why, but my mind went back to Pee-wee's Playhouse, where they had the word, and whatever the word was, everybody would like journaling. Just all the noise. So if we come back to
what we're doing now every time.
I kind of feel like that. Journaling.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think, you know what, it's really, when you look and you're like, I'm intimidated, how do I start on this path, right? It's a great, I don't want to say crutch, but it's a great tool to help you kind of show that there's actually progress. You're not just getting stoned every day and trying to figure out, oh shit, what did I have on Monday, right? Like, what was it? What was I feeling like, know? Because cannabis will bring some forgetfulness, which was our tap in word, right? So, again, like anything, you can overuse, over abuse. And so, finding, I think anyone who's on a strict, usually any professional athlete is very focused on what their goal to achieve is. So they're on a pretty strict diet and pretty strict regimen of, there's an appropriate time to, be using cannabis, an appropriate time not to.
Right tool, right purpose. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about CBG.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits, and, where might that have an application for our athletes?
Well, again, I think, the benefits are really on, the recovery of the body, right? So again, those joint pains, those stress, I don't want to say stress fractures, but there's certain ailments in your body.
Well, most of that is inflammation driven. So
yes. Yeah. So again, we were only really privy to THC for the longest time. Then CBD came through as like, here's an alternative where I'm not going to get those psychoactive effects, right? But as we've started to open up to these other cannabinoids, right, it's providing more specific opportunities for those therapeutic benefits. So, when you go into your local dispensaries, most times, the products are all THC and CBD. Those are kind of the primary
main
focuses.
Ones, yeah.
But we're seeing, as markets are becoming, again, more developed. Again, when you go into California, the dispensaries have a lot more selection and option, right? So we can find those more specific cannabinoid edibles, right, that aren't, THC focused, but more have the CBG, the CBN, to incorporate into your sort of daily routine in that. So, coming up with a weekly plan for yourself, it might not, Friday night might be the night where your, late night edible has actual THC in it, right? So maybe you can get a little bit of the psychoactive effects because that applies more. Saturday morning, I don't have to get up and be right at it, ready to go. But, Wednesday night, I've got something important going on Thursday morning, right? I still want to get that sleep aid, but I don't want to feel a little slow and sluggish in the morning. So using a cannabinoid blend of CBN and CBG with the appropriate terpenes can be a little more focused for yourself.
Okay.
Interested in changing your life or stepping on stage? Join FitBody Fusion today.
Experience the FitBody Fusion difference with tools, knowledge, and community support to reach your healthy and sustainable lifestyle.
We guide thousands on their fitness journeys, from seasoned athletes to those who are simply seeking a healthier life.
Our expert coaches provide personalized plans and unwavering support, empowering you to thrive.
FitBody Fusion is more than just training. It's a community. We understand the challenges of solo fitness journeys, which is why we foster a supportive environment where members encourage and motivate each other.
Join the FitBody Fusion community today and unlock your full potential.
Head to fitbodyfusion.com to sign up for a free consultation.
And do it today.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do we get enough into CBG as far as inflammation or joint pain and recovery?
The one thing I was going to say is I know that it sounds like it's similar in its benefits to CBD.
Yes.
Do you like CBD better than CBG, or is there like a different application for each of those?
Again, I think it really plays down to, what your sort of sole focus on achieving is, right? CBD has kind of become a product that it's just been this big blanket use, right? Like, I'll take CBD if I have a headache, or CBD for this. These newer cannabinoids that were being introduced to us, there's less of an option when it comes to products. Mm-hmm. The strains that are being grown, again, are more focused on THC. So there's sometimes can be less accessibility to being able to get access to it. To create a more specific recipe that focuses, on those anti-inflammatory properties. Again, I personally, between CBD, CBG, CBN, I'm kind of lost on how to say this here. I don't think there's too much of a difference when creating those recipe differences between the two cannabinoids. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Yeah. What about THCV?
THCV. Mm-hmm. So,
because I sometimes see it, and then it's kind of touted as like more of a energizing. It's supposed to like actually decrease appetite. I mean, I see there's like a lot of claims, but I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah, I don't know too much about THCV and those claims. And I think one thing that we've seen, especially in a lot of markets where cannabis isn't legal, we have a lot of these hemp products mm-hmm. that are now available. And those I would be really questionable on. Anything that you can order in a state where it's not legal.
Right.
Again, you're finding these pre-rolled joints. You might be able to go get a hemp joint, no THC. It's all CBG, CBD, and it tastes like strawberries. Again, you've added this botanical terpene in there. The way they're able to get the psychoactive properties out of hemp is by using mass quantities of it. Because the THC percentage is so low, they have to use mass amounts of it to get to that point. So again, when it comes to me with what I'm cooking, I really need to understand the process of where my ingredients are coming from, whether it's a farm, whether, I'm buying seafood from a purveyor. Is this fresh salmon that's being caught, or is this farm salmon? The mm-hmm. same kind of comes when I'm using cannabis, when I'm cooking, right? I really need to have all that information on the plant. And I would just be very skeptical and cautious around using any sort of hemp-based products. Not to say that they're bad for you, but if I don't know the full sort of background on how they've gone about creating the product or what's been added into it, then I don't feel comfortable serving it to people I don't know in that.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I know I do have clients that are in states that they are limited to the hemp products. And I know there's been a couple of things that I've had people try that they've liked, but it's mostly kind of just like there's something called sprinkles. The sprinkles, I don't know if you've seen that product, but it's doesn't have like any added flavors or anything.
Right.
It's just kind of, it's just like the powder you put in there. But they have a hemp derived, but it's like a 5 milligram CBN, 5 milligram THC that they can sell from hemp, which, and I think that one I think has melatonin in it. Mm-hmm. That's the one that has melatonin. Right. So it's kind of more like designed for help with sleep that I've had. People get some pretty good results, and it's not the perfect or the best environment, but the things to look out then for is just kind of like additives or
anything that's not natural from the plant that's going in there, you should kind of be questioning and looking at, right? I mean, the same goes for food now when I'm starting to read labels, and
Sure.
if I don't understand some of this stuff, you can easily now research and look at what things are and what's being added in. So, when
Fillers and shortcuts and preservatives. And
the great thing with the good thing with those hemp products is hemp is a high producer of those other cannabinoids. So, having a hemp derived product with CBN in it, to me sounds something natural. But when we're now having psychoactive properties through THC, I'm going to question, what did you do to be able to get enough THCA in there? So,
got it. That's okay. That's interesting. So like the hemp products might actually have some
that's how
more
we
of the
can.
other
That's how we've
cannabinoids.
been able to purchase CBD over the last 12, 15 years through gas stations and that, because when they put the Hemp Act out, it allowed for hemp products, right? Because they were like, you can only get 0.003% THCA out. It's not enough to get someone high or give them those psychoactive effects.
Right.
And, I don't fully understand what they're doing to be able to get it, but I know it just includes, hey, if we use enough of this plant matter, we can actually pull enough of it out. Well, what else are you pulling out at that high quantity would be my question, right? What are you adding into it to be able to get it? So, just some important questions that I would want to ask myself before, again, cooking for other people and that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know we had talked about different ways of, if people are wanting to do this on their own, they're wanting to.
Wait, do you want to talk a little bit about gut before we go to that?
Well, that's kind of where I was with the CBG, but I don't know that there's, as far as like gut health and like digestion and that kind of thing, any additional feedback you have for the athletes in that area?
I think the cannabis plant can be an assistant to it, but it's not a cure-all, right? Me personally right now, I'm having a total transition with food. As a chef, I became a chef because I love eating food. And there are a lot of foods now that I don't enjoy eating anymore. And when I say I don't enjoy it, is the post.
Yeah, you enjoy eating it. You don't enjoy the after effects. Yeah.
Right. And it, dairy for a long time.
You like it, but it doesn't like you.
Exactly. And dairy was the first thing that came along that I was like, okay, I'm dairy intolerant. I can't have dairy. I drink a lot of coffee. So I had switched to almond milk. And for 10 years, I was drinking 2 or 3 almond milk lattes a day, adding sugar into it. About a year ago, started cutting sugar out. And to make the switch in coffee, I actually switched to just drinking black espresso. Then after a month or two of just drinking black coffee, having an almond milk latte and feeling ill after, and realizing it was the almond milk.
We talk about this a lot, and I mean, I don't know how much we've talked about it on the podcast, but it's so interesting. And when we were raw foodists, we discovered this a lot in our journey, is that there are oftentimes so many food intolerances that you have, not straight up allergic to, but you're not full on gluten and or you don't not full on celiac, right? But you do have a food intolerance, and you get blinded to that food intolerance with little dosing. So you just don't pay attention to those. I remember this with lacta or with milk or dairy products is you get that mucus sensation in your mouth after consuming a dairy product. Well, that mucus response can be an allergic reaction. But if it's just something that you're used to, you're not thinking about it. It's only when you eliminate it and then reintroduce it that you determine, oh, okay, this is what I'm intolerant to. And what you're describing is a journey that most of our athletes or all of our athletes go through at some point, which is, and one of the reasons why we favor macros is because everybody's body is different with food. And so learning to be able to substitute things in and pay attention. And again, journaling, you didn't do it with me. Okay.
You did it too fast. You didn't give us a chance.
And again, journaling. Journaling is so important to determine, okay, when I eat sweet potatoes, I get this response. Or when I eat white rice, I get this response versus brown rice, I get this response. So it's really important to be able to ferret those things out to figure out what works best with my body, which is what you're describing.
And that's the same to go with cannabis, right? And, someone who uses a lot of cannabis myself, it is a lot harder for me to get those specific therapeutic benefits from the terpenes because I'm consuming cannabis usually from morning to night, all day. It's really hard to hone in on those specific terpenes. It's why I say to my guests before coming to the dinner, like, don't smoke the joint before the dinner, right? Come and allow the dinner to take you through those therapeutic effects. If you're, constantly stoned from THC, it's really going to be hard to create those specific.
It's hard to discriminate. Effects, yeah, what's producing
so
what? Yeah.
That's when we look at like the athlete incorporating cannabis. It's a specific meal they're going to have at some point in the day, right? If you're smoking weed in the morning and then you've got your meal later on in the day that you're going to have after working out, you're not going to be able to really hone in on all those therapeutic benefits that could come because your system's been working with cannabis all day, right? It almost is like a wash.
It's almost you're overloaded.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
it's because we have receptors.
Yes.
And then once those receptors are
binded with the cannabinoids and it's called an entourage effect. When a cannabinoid and terpene bind with that receptor at the same time, it gives you that sort of effect, right? So, that's where we can see a real added benefit to an athlete who's on a strict schedule that, this cannabis that I'm using, whereas when I'm not training, I don't have my competition coming up, I can use cannabis just for recreational fun. But if I'm focusing on this schedule, I'm not using cannabis for recreational use, right? And I know on Thursdays I do my heavy lifting. I'm going to sound like an idiot because I don't know the right term.
No, you're doing good.
No, you're
doing really good.
I've got my heavy leg day. I know afterwards, I'm going to shred my legs apart to where I don't want to walk the next day. So, creating a dish that's really focused on the recovery of my legs, I can really hone in and tap in on those terpene, those therapeutic benefits, right? Someone like myself, again, I would have to take such a high amount of CBD to get those specific benefits from CBD because my tolerance with THC is so high, right? So again, that plays in with those other cannabinoids of CBG and CBN, right? To get those sort of to focus on your gut health or to focus, on the sleep aid aspect. If you're abusing the plant and using it too much, you're going to lose out on those sort of honed in specific benefits that you could have. So I think that's the real advantage the athlete can have utilizing, these recipes, and that is creating them for a purpose and, really being able to pull 100% out of it
and not overdoing it.
Yeah.
So being
responsible.
Being smart about
Yeah.
it. And because I was curious too, since I know there's receptors throughout the body.
Yes, yeah, they're spread out from all over. So you have your CB1 receptor and your CB2. The CB1 receptor is found within your central nervous system. The CB2 receptors are found within your immune cells. So they're spread out throughout your body. And again, our body is producing natural cannabinoids already, right? So that's why it is such a synergetic fit when we consume cannabis.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were wanting to make sure that you weren't kind of overloading receptors, would it make sense to smoke at some points and then do edibles at other points and not?
Well, the experience with cannabis from smoking to edibles is completely different, right? You're going to feel two completely different highs, right? I think one of the benefits with, focusing on an edible diet of cannabis over smoking is smoking isn't healthy. Right. That is that's my goal, issues. Right? The lung issue. I want to stop smoking. I am addicted to smoking weed. Like, I want to stop and switch to, enjoying cannabis through edibles, because I won't get up in the morning and have an infused edible at 6:30, but I will with cannabis. I will hit the bong, right? So I would like to switch over. And I think as, we see these maybe older demographics that are new coming into the space, smoking isn't the best introduction. Passing the bong to grandma to convince her that, hey, this is going to help with your arthritis, as opposed to, here's a gummy, right? Here's a plate of food that, you're familiar with. And we can kind of slowly ease and introduce you into it. So there's a time and a place. And then also, it's really important for those tolerance breaks. right? If you are a heavy cannabis consumer like myself, I need to take full on breaks, a 10-day sort of
Cleanse
of like no cannabis. One thing I find, when I take a really long, after about 3 weeks of no cannabis, all of a sudden I start dreaming very intensely. So cannabis will suppress your dreams, heavy cannabis use. And then when you come back, my wife and I joke around a little bit, like that's the withdrawal period, is the intense dreams that you're going to start having when you come off of using cannabis every day, right? So, it's important, again, to sort of self-regulate, taking that bit of a break, because if we really want to hone in on utilizing the therapeutic benefits, we can't just abuse the psychoactive effects that are added. It will cancel it out a little bit.
No, and I think that's really a good thing to explain, because, what we're specifically talking about here is, athletes that are wanting to stay sharp, they're wanting to stay, it's what we do is so detail oriented. I mean, our athletes, like when you're in competition mode and even in improvement season, if people are really doing it in a way that it's optimizing the time, like every moment's accounted for throughout the day, making sure you're right on top of your meals, making sure that, you're sharp in every way, so being able to still enjoy and utilize the therapeutic benefits without going to the point where, things start. Cause like we talked about, certainly if I were to, I don't partake during the day because I know I wouldn't get much done and be effective. So, that's for me, it's very much like tied to sleep for me. And with each person, that's different. What they need to get out of it, what their benefits are. If it does, like if there's somebody who is super anxious and it helps to calm them down, that might make a lot of sense. So it's, I think, journaling and figuring out like, what is the need? What is the terpene and the cannabinoid that's going to help with that need, and then using it,
and taking that knowledge and how you go and shop for it, right? And how you speak with the bud tender, and then even how you go and look at how can I incorporate this? What are the pairings, right? We don't want to just rely on the terpenes from the cannabis. We have those botanical terpenes from the plants, fruits, and herbs. We have those superfoods out there that we can use to sort of heighten, the experience of that therapeutic effect. So,
I love when you talk about the turmeric and the ginger, because I take turmeric as a supplement because it's so great for inflammation, and there's so many benefits to it. So putting some more in your food, that's just going to help.
Taking a little infused olive oil, adding it into your coffee in the morning, right? It could be a CBD infused olive oil, very high in terpenes, a great natural fat to be added in the coffee to have in the morning. There's different ways that we can look at incorporating. Microdosing is a very hot word to be using, and for some people that works, taking little amounts throughout the day. And I think, again, it's, as you said, there isn't one method that means this is the method for success. It's what method works best with me, right? It's understanding your own body. And I don't think anyone knows their body better than athletes. So I think it's a very easy transition for athletes once they start to learn this sort of, the introductory incorporation into cannabis, learning about those 5 main terpenes, learning how to shop for cannabis. It could be a very easy transition to integrate it and to be strict with it.
Definitely. Well, I think this was a great discussion, and I'm super excited because I agree with you. I do think like we're on a new frontier. I mean, obviously, marijuana's been around for a long time. Cannabis has been around a long time, but the level of education and understanding, and then that, like you said, products coming into the market now where it's more accessible, so people can, utilize this in so many different ways.
I think once we see the NFL change its stance is when we really see the needle move. I mean, Big Pharma has their prongs into that, paint. I like to say plant over pills. Now, listen, the cannabis plant is not a cure-all for everything, right? But it has some benefits.
There is no such thing as a cure-all.
No.
Yeah.
But there are advances, and there are products that have been around forever, like cannabis, that have just been vilified through capitalism, through other mechanisms.
It was, if we look back at where it all started, it was the cotton lobby around World War I, because they made uniforms out of hemp, because hemp lasts 3 times longer than cotton. And it was the cotton lobby that used racial tactics and that to demonize cannabis. And then, you know, it's just another way to control. And so, you know, I like to say with our dinners, it's always an uphill battle in the sense that we're trying to change perceptions because we have been force-fed this information that is not correct. And, you know, it's fun to be at the forefront of this right now, you know, helping change minds and open doors for next generations. So,
right. I love that you're focused on the education piece of it.
Yeah.
You know, you've been doing this for a really long time. You've learned so much, and now like shifting over into now helping others then learn and not have to go through the pitfalls and all the learning curves that you did.
I think if we, you know, every time someone comes to a dinner and grains out, it sets us back. Right. And so if all of us chefs out there who are wanting to be cannabis chefs can get on at least a standardized safety model of this is how we go about labeling stuff and doing these steps. One, it shows that we are serious about this. You know, chefs are a very serious profession in the sense of, even if I'm just serving cheeseburgers, right? If I serve you a raw cheeseburger and you get sick from it, you're never coming back to my establishment again, right? Or if I overcook it, like it needs to be perfect. And the same goes with cannabis, right? I need to be perfect with the dosing I'm giving to people because it's a double stab to you. It's I'm not coming back to you, but I'm also not coming back to cannabis ever again because that's for stoners, right? And that's the perception we're out there to break from people. It can be it's not for everyone, but it could be for you if you know we try it in the right sort of setting.
Mm-hmm. We got more?
No, I think that's perfect. So how can people get a hold of you, get access to the courses, to the cookbook?
The course, we can find the American Culinary Federation, has it on their website. You can also go through my website, thenomadcook.com. It'll have a link to send you over there. If you want to be up to date on everything that I'm doing, sort of fresh as it comes out, it's Instagram. So it's _Nomad Cook. That's where we announce our dinners if we're coming to a city near you.
And make sure it's the verified one.
The verified account with the blue check mark. Yes, definitely.
Because we know people are always trying to copy when you got something good going on. I'm always surprised
when someone's like was following one of the accounts. I'm like, come on, it's pretty off. But still, yes, with the verified check mark. Very excited. We have another chef, Chef Jayon Smith. He works for a whole handful of Kansas City Chiefs players. Their season just ended. Go Birds. And he's going to be taking over about 70% of our tours. He's actually starting today in Chicago. He's got a dinner in about 2 hours, but he's on the road for the next 2 months going around. So for April, we've got 2 420 tours going to 22 different cities around the U.S. So come check us out at a dinner. And
are there still seats available at some of them?
Still seats available. Myself, I'll be in New York, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Austin, and then back here to Phoenix. And then Chef Jayon is doing Las Vegas, San Francisco, Portland, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Columbus, ending in Kansas City. So,
and I will say these are amazing experiences. So if you haven't done it, check it out.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
For a guy whose check-in word was forgetful, you seem to remember all those cities pretty well. So on your 420 tour. So tell people what your checkout word is for today.
That's why he's forgetful now. See what you did?
Stoner.
Okay.
I always thought he was going to say journaling.
Well, I was going to say, so everybody, as you're sitting at home journaling, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave your review. And thank you, Chef Travis, for being here. This was very enlightening. We're going to have a fusion hack that we're going to follow up this week.
You just should have been stoned for this episode, but you know.
Yeah, but no.
I don't know how informational it would have been.
No, that's not going to work. So let's give the 3 B's, babe.
Be good to yourself.
Be good to each other and be safe. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to FitBody Lifestyle. We hope today's episode has left you feeling motivated and equipped to tackle your fitness goals, business challenges, and the daily dance of life. Remember to value progress over perfection. Life's tough enough alone. Find the chosen family around you to help you along the way.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at FitBody Fusion.